Want to do something different, and I think this is something we can do on a weekly basis during the Pro Tour season, for the most part, is whoever wins the last Pro Tour event, I'm going to take out my discs that I currently bag, and we're going to see what it's like to throw their bag. I did this with Gannon a couple weeks ago, and that was a ton of fun. A lot of you guys liked that video. And same with the Innova only bag. So this time it's going to be Discraft only, except we're going to be using Paul McBeth's bag. He just won the Green Mountain Championships by, I think, 2 strokes. Played extremely well. 39 under over 4 rounds is pretty good. So, if you go to YouTube, you can type in Paul McBeth in the bag. You can see the latest one from 5 months ago. I am not the end-all be-all expert on Paul McBeth. So, if you're upset that I don't have the exact disc, that's where Replay Sports is going to come in, and they're going to help me fill in any missing gaps, and then I'm going to turn them back in, and you guys can check them out or get them for yourself if you want to. Let's get into what he bags. To break down the molds that I have, we got Lunas, we're going to be putting and throwing, Zones, Buzzes, Melitas, the Malta, the Athena, the Cap Wrap, and the Force. The ones I don't have would be 2 ESP Zones, a Z-Buzz SS, ESP Sagara, a Beta Captain's Raptor, Onyx, and some Forces. But this is what I have. I've got the Lunas, I've got the Melita, I'm going to use my 4-claw Buzz. I've got 2 other Z-Buzzes, similar to the ones that he's throwing. A Malta for that overstable slot, and he throws a bunch of Athenas. I've got 2 nice cotton candy ones that we're going to add in. And then actually, speaking of Replay, a couple used bin finds here of some brand new first run Cap Wraps. And lastly, something I've been bagging and throwing a lot, which is crazy beefy Z-Force. So at Replay, let's see what I found. So we picked out the 8 discs that we were missing from his current bag build. The cool thing is we actually found his 6-claw stamped zone. He has the same one in his bag. At least at the time of his filming, we found this really cool rainbow dyed zone that came in this morning from what Doug tells me. So we got both of our ESP zones that every zone I had, my 4-claw zone, are all Z zones. I like Z zones and glow zones, so we're gonna try out, see what the ESP zones are like. And then I didn't have a Buzz SS currently, so we found a super solid Buzz SS in Z plastic, just like he throws. We're gonna throw that one in there. And then we actually found a Sagara that came in as well in the ESP blend. He throws a ton of ESP. So we've got the Sagara, we've got the Athenas now. Found a more beat-in Cap Wrap because that was something I was missing. And there were actually a couple to choose from, but now we've got a good pair of a new one and a more beat-in one. We got the Onyx. So now we got the Onyx that we were missing. This one was only $8. It's actually a super good condition. So we're gonna see how this one flies. And then the last 2 were some Forces. He bagged 6 Forces. I'm not gonna throw 6 Forces for the video, so I've got a really beefy one, a nice flat one for forehands, and this one's got a lower parting line that I think will be good to maybe have something flip up a little bit more. So I think we got our 4 slot covered. So now we're gonna head to Alex Clark, play the gold layout, get a practice run in for the tournament this weekend, and see what it's like to throw Paul McBeth's bag. And shout out to Replay for helping me complete this setup. Welcome to Alex Clark gold layout. Much, much tougher than the pretty simple pitch and putt. And I'm going with the ESP Malta here. We just wanted to throw something on hyzer and have it crash down, and we juiced it. It ended up skipping down into the water. It probably would have been better to throw one of those zones, but I'm going to try to throw all these discs, and thank goodness I was able to make that putt and not start with a bogey. Shout out to that chain for catching it. Hole 2 here, we got a little bit of a construction going on. Looks like they're doing some work in the creek. So going with the ESP Cigar, I threw it on just a baby hyzer because I wasn't sure how this would fly. And oh my goodness, if you are a Discraft fan, you know how good that disc is. That thing flew like a dream, almost smashed into one of those machinery equipment, but we're able to get to under par with the Cigar. First throw with that disc. And this is a pretty sneaky little, it's a tough 250-foot hole. And of course we smashed the one tree right there after hitting the gap. And that was with the Buzz SS, just gonna approach with the zone, just to get up and down here. It's a tough one, it's kind of hard to get through those trees, to be honest. It's not like an easy birdie by any means. We're able to get that one for a par. So we're not doing too bad here. This one's about 290, a little bit into a headwind. This is the Force that I said might have a little bit more flip up to it. So you see it flipped up left and finally hooked up at the end. So left me just edge of circle. I was thrown into a headwind. There's just no wind there. So the force, feels pretty good in ESP plastic to throw for forehands and backhands. But this is to get to 2 under. That is a great putt on an elevated basket. Pretty happy with how that turned out, and kind of playing guessing game here, where in the world they would have us tee from. It changes every tournament. It's about 280 feet. Going with the ESP Onyx, this one is very protected by all those trees. You can see the basket right there, and if you look closely, you can see it coming down. Thank goodness it was raining. Barely. Look at that. Chunk. Thankfully, it stayed in bounds. We're able to hit the putt to get to 3 under, because otherwise that's a par putt. And this one is normal hole 1. This is a little bit lighter Z Buzz, old pre-flight number 1 we found actually in the used bins at Replay at one point. Grabbed that from inventory, and worked out pretty well. Didn't have to hit it super hard, and it still drifted to the right for me. So this one's just a little edge of circle putt with the Luna that we barely got in, but that gets us to 4 under. Before a very tricky shot. This was actually my first shot out of the truck today. Straight into the tree. That one went OB, and I lost the 6-claw ESP Athena. So that one is gone, but you know what? We threw it, and I'm going to try to do my best to throw every mold that I can today. So I decided to go back on the right-hand side. It's a little bit safer, and got up there with the Z Buzz. That one's a fresher buzz. It's a little bit more overstable than the other two. And I do like that McBeth minimizes his molds. I think he's done that at Innova, other manufacturers as well, where you've got 3 different forces that I have today. And just like for me, I've got 3 or 4 different destroyers that I use with different levels of stability. So that is something that you always notice when you're looking at pros bags. They're not just throwing the entire lineup. They have a disc. They're going to keep the disc in the bag for a while. And once it starts to beat in, they add another one. They cycle them through. So definitely something to consider. Also, that pin was missing, so I had to just kind of like play imaginary disc golf there. And this one is 418 feet. I should have thrown this line on the left-hand side. I didn't realize it until I came back the next day. But that it's a tough one to get to. Sometimes they make it a par 4. I'm just going to count it as a par 3 for me. And we'll move on. That was the ESP Cigar. I think that is actually a really good mold. I would throw that myself if I was a Discraft player. And then I'm going off the tee here with my very, very beefy Z-Force. This was a used bin find, brand new, no tooling, older force that is just the absolute perfect Z stiffness. I love that disc. It's actually something I have in my bag for this tournament this weekend. And then approaching with that 6-claw zone, very similar to the one that he throws. And it's a little bit more mellow, I think, than some of my Z zones. ESP is actually not a plastic blend that I've enjoyed all that much, if I'm being completely honest. It's usually pretty slick, and I usually like more of like Champion Z style of plastic because it's got a little bit extra grip and it's a little bit stiffer. But the 2 zones that I found actually kind of worked. And the Melita they've got actually seems to be a different blend of ESP. I'm not actually sure if that's the case or not. Now in the video he doesn't technically show the Melita because it wasn't out yet, but I know he's been throwing that in some tournaments, and that's what we're going to do here. And I actually didn't know these were 2 Mandos that I called out, but the Melita is just so good that it was basically the perfect line. Right in between both of those Mandos, and gives me a very simple up and down with the zone. In the tournament, this definitely could be my play. So we'll get out of here with a birdie on that par 4. It's a pretty easy par 4 if you don't get that one. Not great. Gets us to 5 under, and I'm going down this hill with an ESP Athena. This is the prototype one. Doing a little bit of hyzer and actually stood up a little bit, and I know we're going a little downhill. It started to show that fade at the end, but it actually caught that tree. I think if I would have done that again, I would have thrown the Malta instead, because downhill probably could have got away with just a mid-range. And this is the first time I'm busting out that or beat in cap wrap. I think it still has quite a bit of stability, and this one is kind of throwing up into this hill. There's just one tree to miss, right? Once you get through, and of course that's the one on the left that I smashed, kind of kicked me back to right outside of circle, not able to get it in. Not the biggest fan of the feel maybe of the Luna. I think I like a bead or maybe a sharper an edge, more defined edge. But it's all personal preference. It works for McBeth. Not knocking it at all. And then we're going back to that cap wrap. I was kind of surprised not to see a Raptor in his bag. So maybe he has just beat the hell out of his current Z cap wrap so that it, you know, it's not so overstable. And of course, we have the Big Z Luna. This is one of the best putters that you can use for flip up shots just like that. You can use it for straight shots. Have it hold an Anheuser. It is a very good mold. So he's only got one throwing putter besides the zones, if you want to consider the zones throwing putters. Those are approach discs. I think they're a category of their own. And then, of course, the Buzz. This is a 4-claw Buzz. So this is when he won his 4th World Championship. And then we're going to the 6-claw zone. So we're throwing a couple claw discs here. If you see the 4 claws, those are the ones that are most valuable. They can go for a couple $100. And you don't normally see people throw those, but I think discs should be thrown. So I bought that one to throw, and a little forehand tap in birdie here to get us to 8 under. In the last hole here, going with that Buzz SS. Not a mold that I've played around with a ton, tried to take some off of it, but it just goes a long way. Very beginner friendly disc. And we're at 8 under. 7 under was my first ever 1,000 rated round out here at a tournament one day. So I like this course. It's a decent layout. And we're going to finish here up at 8 under par with McBeth's bag. I had a ton of fun and learned a couple things here and there about his molds. What a fun round, Alex Clark today. I gotta head back over. I'm gonna drop these back off at Replay if you guys want any of these. They're gonna be available in the used bins.